go. Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great show for you. Jim Bridger with my co-host, Hawkeye Two Feathers, David Null. Thank you for being here.
And it's another day in the Milky Way, and we like to always say that we welcome you with the love and the honor of the infinite creator, and we always hope that you're doing as well as possible in this crazy world that we live in. And so tonight we start a new book with some I say short stories, and the story for tonight is The Birth of the Whitewater Lily, and it's from Fanciful Tales from the Legends of the Adirondack. So stay tuned for that one. And of course, I'm going to pull some cards. So y'all be ready to, pick your animals for tonight and see if you're lucky. And and Robert's got a bunch of stuff lined up for us, so it ought to be interesting. So hang out with us and interact with the other folks in the chat room if you so desire. And we welcome you as always. Cheers.
That's right. All is good. So what do you got? How you been for this last week since we caught up with you last week? Anything going on in that part of the country? Must be starting to get cold. Winter's a coming.
Yeah, we had a couple of cold, chilly nights here. And so, I should have had a fire, but, I was like, well, it won't be too cold tonight. And then it was like, brrr. Then I just jumped into bed with Doug and we shared the covers.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what happens when winter comes. You hunker down. So, okay. I'm almost to my spot. We're going to be talking about Jim Bridger, and there's so much. I could do 2 shows. I could do 3 shows on this guy. I've been holding off on Jim Bridger only because there is so much stuff on him, and you hear it all the time. So, it's like, oh, people know about this guy. They don't want to hear about him, but I'm sure that we got to cover him one of these days because he really intertwined with pretty much everyone from Kit Carson to who's that other guy that we talked about, the black guy. Anyway, he did all kinds of things, and no, he was not the guy in the Revenant movie. We've talked about the Revenant, and in the movie they call the kid Bridger, but that was not the guy. If it was the guy, he would have been like 19 or 20 years old at this time. And we do have some records. We don't have a lot of his younger year records. Oh, I see Scotty Boy's in the house. There he is. Hey, aloha. Is that how you say it? Aloha, or is coming and going? Chris Smith's in the house. Lucky Stone's in the house for Tribal Tuesday. A happy Tuesday of the Tribal Soul. There you go. A new one instead of Tribal Tuesday. Anyway, thank you for being here. Chris Smith's here. Elderberry's here. Nina the Mystic. Witchy Moon. And Richard the Red. Richard, yeah. Hi, Robert and Hawkeye and Chat. There you go. Thank you for being here. Good to see you all. Yes, so many people in here tonight. So thank you for all being here because we got a good show for you. And we enjoy your company. Heck, that's what we come on here for. To entertain and to enlighten your history knowledge. That's the way I want to put it, right? But tonight we're going to be
And to interact with our friends, you know.
That's right. Sometimes that's the only place you get to meet up with your friends. And speaking of that, Lucky Stone had a really good video about that today. Go check it out. Lucky Stone. He has a good short. It's a short, so don't think you're gonna watch a big long video. Get on there, watch that, make some comments. It's a good one. Okay, so we're going to go back in time. That's what we're going to do. We're going to imagine a land way back there where there was no wagon tracks, no telegraph wires, no towns that exist, just snow-capped peaks, silent rivers, and the howl of unseen predators.
Gene, Mr. Peabody.
Yeah, we're going in the Wayback Machine. Don't you just love it? I love it. And everybody loves it, and we're gonna go with a picture because that is always a really good one to have, is a picture of what we're talking about. And as soon as I can share screen, I will put it up here, and we can look at the picture, because who wants to not have a little visual? And there you go. Again, now we traveled back in time into the wilderness where Jim Bridger rode. Now, who was this guy? He was born in Virginia in 1804. And he would go on to trap beaver on the Missouri River, of course, and blaze trails across the Rockies, stand at the edge of the Great Salt Lake and the Yellowstone geysers, and build a fort that thousands of wagon trains would pass. He wasn't just surviving the West, he knowed it, as the old timers would say. He read the land like a book. He spoke in a soft voice, and he walked the paths no one else dared. So tonight, we're going to meet the man who became the map for a nation. That is the legend of Jim Bridger. So, a little bit about Jim Bridger. Let's go into what he looks like, and so you get to know the guy we're talking about. And this is he lived again. Here's a guy who lived long enough to get his photograph taken. Isn't that something?
Yep, to get his picture took.
Yeah, and that's just unbelievable. That he lived so long, discovered the whole country, and then when he died, there were pictures that we could actually get a picture of the guy that we know as Jim Bridger. And speaking of that, we're talking about how he mapped the West and stuff like that. This guy was kind of illiterate. Again, he couldn't read and write, but believe it or not, they said he had a photographic memory. Now, we think of people who are like geniuses in school, and they can, do the photographic memory thing. And but he did the photographic memory, and that way, that's how he could find his way around, is because he had that photographic memory. He could take you back to trails and places he'd been by, seeing things, and then, I got to go this way because I know the path. I remember it. I got, it's up in here. And his memory was actually better than some people's maps. There was a time when he was doing a scouting trip, and the guy was lost, and he was trying to read the map, and old Jim Bridger just says, "Hey, no, not that way. You got to go this way." Yeah. So a little bit about that. Well, let's take you back. We're going to go back where he was born in Richmond, Virginia in 1804. Most of those people back in the day, they were from the colonies or the states that were now states, and they were advancing west. And just like that, his family advanced west too, looking for new and open land. In 1812 to 1818, the family moves towards St. Louis, and young Bridger learned survival skills. His dad, he was a surveyor. He was a hunter and a trapper too, kind of. And then they moved towards the west, and apparently they died. All his siblings except his sister died, and he continued on taking care of his sister, and eventually he decided to, at the age of 18, he joins up. Actually, before let's go back a second. So when he had to take care of his sister, um, he became a blacksmith and a gunsmith of all things. So at a young early age, I imagine he was an apprentice, because back in those days, you just didn't get hired on, you became an apprentice. And he was trying to earn money to support his younger sister. And at 18, he comes up with this great idea that he's going to join Ashley and Henry's fur trading expedition up the Missouri. And he did. That was in 1822. So just a few years after they got to Missouri, which was kind of like the takeoff point. In 1824, we're just giving some highlights now of the years. 24, 25, he was among the first non-native men to see the Great Salt Lake and explore the Yellowstone region. And if you don't know where that is, we're going to show you in a second. This would have been the Great Salt, or the Yellowstone. You know, you get there, and remember we were talked about John Coulter, and John Coulter said, "Oh, it's like smells like sulfur and steam, and the mountains are like glass, and the water is boiling hot." And that's what you would have seen: Buffalo Hills, beautiful scenery, and then you would have seen geysers blowing out of the ground, something most men had never seen before, if ever they'd seen it. Can you imagine walking into a spot like this and going, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, no, and just for the and to Old Faithful, it's like, I don't know if it still goes off with the same regularity with the changes in the park over the years, but the fact that it went off as high as it did, and they were like, whoa, that's really cool. They hung around a little bit, and all of a sudden, rumble, 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 it went off again. Yeah. And so it was one thing to watch it go off, but to see the thing go off multiple times in one day, that really impressed them.
Yes. And people wouldn't believe it because they've never seen anything quite like that either. So as we take our trip down here, this is where he would have been. If you don't know where Yellowstone is, this is kind of the area. He would have been fur trapping up in here, and they're moving everything. Remember, the Louisiana Purchase opened up the whole middle of the United States here, and all of this area up there. And so he's going out there to trap and get the best beaver possible. And he's going up the Missouri River, which is this river right here. And he gets over to the Yellowstone, and he sees all this stuff. And then, of course, a little bit after that, he was in 1824-25, he was one of the first non-native men to see the Great Salt Lake and explore that too. There's a story behind that where he was sent out as a scout, and because that's what he did. He was running scout, trapping beaver, and they sent him ahead from the expedition, and they said, you go ahead and see where this river goes, or blah blah blah. And he headed out, got out there, and come across this lake that he's seen. It went on for miles and miles, and it was salty, and he thought he went to the ocean. And he came back telling him, oh my gosh, I got to the sea and it's salty. And the men were really happy because when they got there, they could scrape salt. And as you know, they use salt as a preservative for a lot of things. You'd be out there in the wilderness, you don't have salt. It ain't like you're carrying salt. Can you imagine eating your food without salting it? Sounds silly, but it's true. So you have the Great Salt Lake. And of course, nowadays it's kind of drying up, but hey, that's besides the point. In the 1830s, he saves his money. He had to borrow some too, but he bought into and became partners in the Rocky Mountain Fur Company. and that extensively traps in the Rockies. And then of course the beaver thing kind of peters out because everybody's out there trapping for beaver. And eventually, just like the buffalo or the passenger pigeons, they all, ran out of beaver. And so in 1843, because about 1840, the beaver empire kind of collapsed. And a Bridger has to do something. And he went back to Missouri for a little while, and he realizes that he's not happy there. He got married to a native woman and had some kids and blah, blah, blah. You know how that goes. And he says, I'm not happy. I'm going back out. So he goes back out and he establishes Fort Bridger on the Green River in Wyoming as a trading post or an outpost, for the Indians and stuff. By 1850, he finds Bridger Pass, and I'm sure the Indians already knew about the pass, but to get the wagons across, you had to have a safe trail. I think we talked about that before, on our show about taking the wagons. You got these big giant wagons, and they don't have rubber wheels, and you just got oxen or horses or mules pulling them, and you're going up a mountain, and you got to have a good trail, and you got to have a pass. You can't be going over the white caps up there. So he discovers this pass, and it shortened. It was a shortening of the Oregon Trail by 60 plus miles. And back in those days, 60 miles would be 2-3 days, maybe more.
Or more, yeah.
Because I think they go 15, maybe 20, and I suppose in the mountains they even went less. Yeah, I mean, I've been riding on my horse, and riding 25 miles in a day is almost impossible. Well, unless you're just running them, like the Pony Express or something. But by 1857-58, he starts serving as a guide and scouting during the Utah War. That's with the Mormons. And later he was involved in Red Cloud's War, too. Needless to say, we're skimming over a lot of this. And of course, by 1881, he dies near Kansas City, Missouri at age 77. And that's something, how a guy like that can, live that long and just take on all of these things. What's everybody talking about? The Great Muddy was a highway back then. Yeah, highway. Scotty likes your hat. There you go. It's a good hat. It's a good hat.
Good hat.
So anyway, we're going to move on.
And so, as an entrepreneur, I'm wondering if there was all that salt, why they wouldn't, collect it and, and sell it.
They did. I mean, it's, the trappers would go there and they had to collect this stuff. I'm sure there was guys who made businesses out of that because, they're hauling salt all the way from the coast or wherever you're going to get the salt was a lot of work. I mean, there's salt out there, but finding it in vast quantities, that's easy. Literally, there's the salt mounts up, as you can see in the one picture here. It mounts up right on the shore, and you could literally go pick it up, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. But in all the things that we have discussed over these last months, collecting the salt and selling it has not been a topic.
The what?
Collecting the salt and selling it has not been a topic for discussion.
That is true. That is true.
I just pointed it out. Me. I'm looking at stuff and going. We've talked about all these people over the last half a year, and with all the businesses and the beaver and everything, and I'm sure that they dabbled in the salt, but there's no mention of it, and it's all just laying there. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
Yep. No, you're totally right. You're totally right. And maybe one of these days I will run into that. thing about, what's going on. So anyway, so let's get back to the subject and Jim Bridger, our main topic tonight. So what are we going to do? Before the cowboys were there and the wagon trains and before maps, there was the mountain men. They were kind of like the first explorers. They were out there to trap and get that beaver pelt, which was, big bucks back then. It'd be like Bitcoining, mining for Bitcoins, but they're trapping for beaver. They had to be rough. They had to be tough and wild as the wind. Men who walked into the wilderness and came back with stories and scars and trails we still follow today, believe it or not. And out of those legends, one of the names that stands higher than everybody else, and he crossed all the peaks and he became all these different, as you would say, you'd put on a different hat every time, which I'm sure he didn't put a different hat, but, different jobs, was Jim Bridger. He was a trapper, a scout, and an explorer. He was a man who took the West from myth and made it into something you could walk down a path for. So back to his early life. Jim Bridger was born in March 17th. Isn't that like St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah.
1804. Yeah, I think it is St. Patrick's Day. There you go. Wonder if he was had any Irish in him. And in Richmond, Virginia, as I said before, his family didn't have much money. But Jim had a sharp mind and a sharp eye. By the time he hit the teens, he was already drifting across toward the frontier. When he was 18, Jim heard about the advertisement, like we talked about, in General William Henry and Ashley. He was looking for 100 young men to travel upriver, trap beaver, and open new trade routes. And somehow or another, I think there was usually always an opening there because these men would go out there and a lot of times they lost their lives, due to Indians drowning. I heard one tale. I'm going to tell you this one tale. So they were talking about, commended for consumption due to the potential contamination with heavy metals and arsenic. Well, yeah, maybe it is. Like he says, don't eat the salt out of the Great Salt Lake. But what I read, that the men went there and they were collecting the salt. So who knows? Back then I suppose they didn't have any what you call it? Well, they couldn't see the heavy metal. They didn't know what heavy metals were, I'm sure. So what was I talking about?
Yeah, microscopes were, you had to order those.
Yes. So to talk a little bit about some of the stupid things that men did back in the day was like they were hauling gunpowder. They were hauling gunpowder and they were going upriver. And we talked about they had those keel boats and they're pushing them and, you get tired. And of course, these guys like to smoke. They get a little tobacco out, start smoking. And the one guy goes down in the hall. And he's like, I'm smoking. And he's smoking on top of the gunpowder. What do you think happened? he blew it up. He blew the whole boat up, killed 3 guys, and of course himself. But, guess they didn't, not like today. Today, they would have safety signs and they'd be like, no smoking allowed, blah, 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 blah. This is a safe environment. Back then, I'm going down the hall, smoke a little cigarette while I'm taking a break, Yeah,
kaboom. Jump on a big, a big sack of gunpowder.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course, well, we gotta get out and go hunting. And the guy, another tale, he goes out there and he's doing hunting. And of course, we know the guy from the movie, Hugh Glass. That's the guy I'm thinking of. He went out there hunting a bear and almost got killed. And many of them did get killed trying to hunt. Oh, we're going to go out and shoot a few deer and they get killed by a bear. Or an Indian. A lot of them died from Indians. It was nothing to I've been reading all these stories, and it's like, oh, we went out there and we were chopping wood and getting stuff ready to build a fort, and now one of us got killed by the Indians, but the rest of us made it back. I'm thinking, you act like oh, just one of us got killed. Like, dude, your buddy there just got killed, and you're just like, yeah, just one of us got killed. We're gonna go out try to cut some more wood tomorrow.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, that they were playing the odds, and if only one person got killed, they were like, "Whew, that was a good day,"
Yeah, it wasn't me. But I mean, I just think about it. It's like, oh man, these guys are just like rolling the dice every single day. And
And
if you didn't,
I know that when you're reading your stories there, it's like and they prepared to go out to the frontier. They everywhere that back then was a frontier. Unless you lived in Philadelphia, as soon as you left the city limits, you were in the wilderness. So everything was wilderness back then,
yeah,
And,
yeah,
and I listen, and I'm like, oh, they got prepared to go out in the wilderness. No, anything, west of the shore line of America was wilderness, back in 1780, hell yeah, everything was wilderness. So, but, and everybody on a
mhm,
daily basis, they were all in a survival mode. They
yeah,
all had to go chop wood. They all had to go get water out of the well. They all had to go do so, many of the things, it was 20 yards to the outhouse,
yeah,
by really make it. But the idea though that in reading some of these things, how it's put, how the words are chosen for these things. No, these folks were, every day just going to get water was a chore.
yeah, exactly. I see Sagati says, they all didn't boil all the water either. Yeah, and then they got sick, and then they died. And that was one case with Jim Bridger, and we're gonna come up to that in a second. So let's get back to him for a bit, and we got some more questions here. So don't worry, you can chime in. But here's the thing: is they wanted 100 young men, and the spots keep opening up. Two guys got killed. Hey, we need two more. Spot just opened up. Come on in. Like, really? Oh, yeah, you too. Anyway, so Jim Bridger joined a group of men like Jedediah Smith and Hugh Glass, Kit Carson, a whole bunch. I mean, so he signs up. He's barely a man, and he's making decisions not for his life, but his future. Taking care of his sister and things like that. Well, anyway, the Missouri River became the highway. We talked about that before. So, him and the other guys would up the highway they'd go. What did he learn during this time when he's joining this group? He learned how to read tracks in snow. He learned how to set traps. He learned how to hunt elk and buffalo and bear. He learned how to negotiate the native tribes. And he learned how to survive a winter at 8,000 feet without dying. And like I said, each one of these things is called death. And read some tracks, or you're going to get killed. How do you set up a trap? You're going to get killed. How to hunt elk and buffalo and bear? You could get killed. How to negotiate with the native tribes? You could get killed. See? He also learned the unspoken code of the mountain man: your rifle, your horse, and your word. And that's your life. And really, when you're out there, that's about all you got.
And your Bowie knife.
Yeah, exactly. It's if he had a Bowie knife. I don't know. Probably. Maybe by that time
they all had to have a big knife.
They did.
It just because when they couldn't reach their gun and a bear jumped them, They had to have a knife.
Well, yeah, they had a skin all those hides and stuff. So
Yep.
I'm sure they had plenty of knives. Skinning knives, big knives, Bowie knives, the whole bunch. I mean, they wielded it like a sword, I'm sure. So let's get back up to the discovery of the Great Salt Lake. In 1824, Jim Bridger made his history without even meaning to. He traveled west to present-day Utah, following a river that seemed to lead nowhere until the mountains opened up and he found himself standing before a vast inland sea. Like I said, he wasn't alone with this. He was with his group, his party, and they were moving down the rivers trying to get to new spots. And they would send out a scout. Is there any Indians there? Look, is there a pass there? Is there a lake there? Is there a river? Can we travel there? Or is it just too dang hard? And what do you send out the scout? And who better to send than a guy that has a photographic memory? Yeah. So Jim went out there, and he was one of the first white men, I should say, to see the Great Salt Lake. Well, there was another guy about the same time, but I think he came in from the north. It was right or roughly around the same time. But of course, even if you discover something back in the day, it ain't like you can just call up or put it on YouTube. I can see it now. Hey, look, the Great Salt Lake. Look at me. I'm taking a short. I'm gonna post it when I get home. You know what I mean? Ah, geez. He thought he'd found a piece of the Pacific Ocean. And while honestly, he was standing on the shore, he had no map, no knowledge, no one to ask. So, he comes back and reports that. But he learned eventually that the water was salty as brine, and it really had no outlet. Of course, this became, a discovery, and it was whispered among the trappers, hey, there's a salt lake up there, and the word traveled eventually, and people came and they made maps, because these guys were, the groundbreakers. These were the guys that were writing down the map stuff. Okay, so we're going to move on to Yellowstone, and Yellowstone has some good, interesting things, because hey, back in those days, we're gonna you come across something like this and you're like, holy mackerel, what is going on here? So he pushed they're pushing north, and what they call Yellowstone. So I imagine there was beaver and elk and all that good stuff to hunt there, and trap, so they keep moving. Well, of course, he's seen some geysers, and he's seen the boiling springs, shooting hundreds of feet into the air, bubbling mud pits. He saw canyons carved by fire and ice. When he came back and told the trappers what he'd seen, they thought he was lying. Remember, it's one of those things you gotta have. You gotta have a good word. And and then they all say, oh, Bridger, you tell us such tall tales. I'm surprised your horse don't rear from the weight of them. But years later, they found out he'd been telling the truth and the whole time. And because Jim Bridger wasn't a liar. He might have been a tall tale person, but he wasn't a liar. But it was just so unreal that people couldn't even imagine it. Okay, so we're going to keep moving. And this is so beautiful out there. Wyoming. If you ever get a chance, go to Wyoming, check it out. Beautiful. There's the Salt Lake, Utah. Of course, if you don't get to Utah now, you better get there soon, because it looks like the lake is shrinking. It is beautiful. So check it out. There are birds and stuff that live there, I'm sure. There we go. Now we go to Fort Bridger. Fort Bridger is the crossroads of the West. So remember, the beaver trade is done and over with, and Bridger's there, and he's like, hey, what do I do now? So in 1843, Jim Bridger and his partner opened Fort Bridger on the Green River in Wyoming. And Fort Bridger became one of the most important trading posts in all the West. Why? Why did it? Because every major migration trail ran through it. The Oregon Trail, the California Trail, and the Mormon Trail. even the Pony Express route. Believe it or not. And it is a museum, Fort Bridger State Historic Site and Museum. So if you get out there, eventually I'll get there one of these days, and go visit it. Maybe that's my plan for next year. So thousands of immigrants passed through Fort Bridger, and Jim guided and traded and helped many of them survive the journey west. And Fort Bridger was like a Walmart, the mechanic shop, the outfitter, and news station of the frontier, all in one log compound. And you'd think, oh, it's so big. It really wasn't. So this is the biggest picture. This is a good kind of picture I could kind of wrangle up for you. You can see in the background here, here's a wagon train with their wagons all circled, cows and wagons coming in, mule trains and Indians. And, you know, you got your fort here just in case you get attacked. And if you want to know how to get there, and this is where it is, you go to Wyoming. Here's Casper, and you take the road down 200 and 220, stay on 220, and you'll get to Fort Bridger. Or you can stay on 80 and go through Cheyenne, and you'll get to Fort Bridger. Look at all the trails pass right next to Fort Bridger. How about that? So, yep, good place to build a fort. Hopefully he made some money on it. And then he started scouting, working for the Army. Go figure. So there he is. That's probably a best picture you can have. He was a tall man, a little over 6 foot or better, and skinny, rough cut face, and a soft spoken voice. Carried a big gun. Yep. So when the West filled with settlers, the U.S. Army needed scouts who actually knew the land and men who could read the mountains like a map. So they turned to Jim Bridger. He guided military expeditions, survey teams, and road builders, and early railroad scouts. His knowledge shaped the early infrastructure of the American West. He discovered Bridger Pass, which shortened the Oregon Trail by nearly 60 to 70 miles. And he guided infantry during the Utah War, and later worked during Red Cloud's War, warning the military of dangers, and warning that often was ignored, of course, to their own cost, because he knew the Indians, and yet those guys, yeah, I don't care what you say, we're going to go in anyway. So, and this would be him guiding the trails, their oxen, their wagons, you know, military guys, all kinds of stuff going on. So, did he have relations with the tribes? Of course they did. He even married into the native culture twice. His first wife, Cora, was a Flathead woman, Flathead Indians. His second wife was a Chinook, a Shoshone woman. And he spoke multiple languages, and he worked hard to keep his peace when he couldn't, but he could understand the realities of the frontier and how quickly peace could turn into conflict. Now, as I was told, he could speak English, of course. He spoke some French. He spoke and at least 2 to 3 native languages. So again, he was well-rounded in the language speaking. Even if I don't know if he spoke it real fluently, but hey, if you can speak that much, you know, you're the man. Remember, we talked about that once before. If you could speak multiple languages, is Fort Bridger still there? Yes, it is. Anyway, we got some more pictures of Fort Bridger. So if you came to Fort Bridger, this might be what it looks like. You'd have tents and teepees of the Indians coming to visit, you know, set up all over the place, and it'd probably be filled with natives running all over the place at this point. He had a bunch of children. His mixed heritage children and grandchildren went on to make cultures, bridge cultures. You know, I guess he had every time he would have a child with a native woman to keep them out of harm's way. He would ship them to St. Louis for schooling and training and whatever. So he would ship them so they weren't illiterate like he was. So I thought that was kind of nice. They trying to take care of his kids. Later years and death. As railroads came through the mountains and fur trade died off, the world Jim Bridger master began to fade. Age caught up with him. His eyesight was failing. And he said the mountains were getting too tall, or maybe he was getting too old. And Jim Bridger died on July 17th, 1881, on his farm near Kansas City at age 77. He lived long enough to see the West he once owned turn into the world of towns and railways and telegraph wires. He didn't complain. He said he'd had his time, he'd lived it full. So, Jim Bridger didn't live by books or laws, or he made them. He lived by experience. He lived where maps ended and where courage began. He walked lands most of us will only see in paintings. He explored Yellowstone before it had a name. Yes, he did. Well, this is where the Pony Express went right through there, too. He stood on the shores of the Great Salt Lake before anyone believed it even existed. And he built a fort where the whole world eventually passed by. He even met up with the Mormon guys. This is pictures of the buildings at the Fort Bridger back in the 30s before they fixed them all up. He was a scout of scouts, the tracker of the untrodden, a man who carved trails through the mountains just by walking them. He didn't chase fame. He didn't need history to remember him because the land still does. And when the wind rushes across the plains and the rivers cut through the Rockies, and when the travelers cross Bridger Pass, that's Jim Bridger, still guiding, still watching, and still part of the West he helped to build. Now, I'm going to go on and talk about some of the ingenious things and different stuff that he would have been doing. He would have been associating with the natives. The Crow Nation was one of Bridger's closest allies and trading partners. Was the Crows, and I guess they did a lot of trading and stuff. They were a good, I'd say a good nation to team up with. Their homeland was in Montana and Wyoming, and of course that's probably why he built his fort there. The Yellowstone and Bighorn regions, right in that area. The Crow Nation was a horse culture. They were buffalo hunters and they lived in teepees. They were some of the most famous horsemen. Some of them were the best scouts in the West. Their long tradition of trade with the mountain men and trappers. They were generally friendly towards Americans during their expansion. Their connection with Bridger, Bridger spoke Crow language, and he traded with them often. They respected him as a man of the mountains and sometimes guided him through their territory. And many of his famous Yellowstone stories came through Crow lands. Okay, well, then there was the Shoshone. They were eastern and northern Shoshone. The home tribe of one of Bridger's wives. Of course, it made them have strong family ties there. Their home was in Wyoming and Idaho, or maybe northern Utah. They were hunter-gatherers and they were horse people. They had a deep knowledge of the mountain travel, and later famous figures included Sacagawea and Chief Waskowski. Waskowski? No, something like that. Sorry. Connection to Bridger. Bridger married a Shoshone woman, and after the death of his first wife, this tied him into the tribe's family culture and diplomacy. What better way to make diplomacy if you're married into the tribe? The Shoshone respected Bridger as someone who lived between the worlds. Of course, then the Flathead. Remember, he had another wife. This was his first wife, and it was the Flathead or the Salish. They were known for salmon fishing, horse culture, and mountain forest living. They were known for being a peaceful and diplomatic culture. They had strong allies in early trappers and missionaries. His first wife, Cora, was a flathead, and he lived among them for periods and developed friendly ties, gaining safe passage through their territories. Yes, that's a good way to do it. The Blackfeet, one of the most feared tribes for trappers. Of course, you know why one of the Blackfeet were one of the most feared tribes? Because when Lewis and Clark were going through on their big journey, Lewis accidentally, or maybe he did, he shot one of the Blackfeet, and they held a grudge ever since. Okay, so who are the Blackfeet? They lived in Montana, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and their lifestyle was mostly buffalo hunting. It was a buffalo hunting nation. They controlled most of the northern Rockies and plains. So like all those trappers going up that way, wow, they had a target on their back. They were very highly protective of their lands. They were known for raids on fur brigades and rival tribes. Well, their connection to Bridger. Oh, well, he had tense encounters with them, and the Blackfeet often fought trappers, especially those aligned with their enemies like the Crow. So you can't be in both worlds. You're either with the Crow or you're with the Blackfeet. And well, he was with the Crow. So there you go. He respected them, but approached their territory with caution. Yeah, because they'd kill you. Okay, well, then you got the Sioux, the Lakota Nation. Homeland is the Dakotas, Wyoming, and Montana. They were, nomadic horse warriors and had a buffalo-based culture. We know about the Sioux, Red Cloud, Crazy Horse, and Sitting Bull. We talk about them often. They had a strong resilience to the railroad expansion and forts in Wyoming. Of course, during Red Cloud's war, Bridger was there. He was working as a guide for the U.S. Army. He warned them repeatedly about the dangers of the Bozeman Trail running through Lakota hunting grounds. His warnings, as usual, were ignored, resulting in the Fetterman Massacre. We talked about the Fetterman Massacre before, so go look that up. Didn't turn out well. Bridger wasn't anti-Lakota. He simply understood the reality of them. When you understand your enemy, you respect them. Of course, you have the Arapaho. Colorado and Wyoming, again, they were nomadic plains tribe. They were close allies with the Cheyenne. They were skilled horsemen and traders. Bridger regularly traded with them, and Fort Bridger saw Arapaho camps visiting frequently for trades. So, and there was some of the Ute tribe. He went to with all of them. They had a connection to Bridger too. Bridger spent time in Utah and southern Wyoming. He encountered Ute trade groups and hunting parties. Relations varied with him, sometimes friendly and sometimes cautious. He even got way up into Oregon and Washington through Idaho and met the Nez Perce. They were horse breeders, salmon fishers, and they had a plateau culture. Although not a primary tribe or interaction with Bridger, he did encounter them on the northern expeditions. He admired them, especially their horses. Well, with all of that, he traded with the Crow, he married into the Flathead and the Shoshone, he negotiated with the Arapaho and the Ute, and he fought and scouted during conflicts with the Sioux. And he always treated the tribes with respect most white men lacked. He survived not by fighting the land, but by learning from the people who knew it best. Now, we're going to talk about some of the stuff that he did. And I got all these different stories that I could talk about, but one kind of, really, really got to me today, and I want to read that one first. And it's kind of a happy but sad one because there's so many ones with grizzly bears and things like that, but we're going to skip some of them. We're going to go to a weird one you probably haven't heard before. And it's the Sir Saint. Have you ever heard of this guy? That's kind of what I want to know. Have you ever heard of this guy? And I can stop sharing. Here's, they put the thing. Oh, there we go. Anyway, this guy's name is Sir Saint George Gore and Jim Bridger. And this was called the bloodiest pleasure hunt in the Rockies. And you wouldn't believe this if I wasn't telling you this, but in the mid-1850s, a wealthy Irish nobleman named Sir St. George Gore arrived in America. He went west with more money than sense. He wasn't actually a duke, but he acted like one. He was a titled baronet, dripping with old world wealth, and he traveled with an attitude of royalty. This man didn't come west to trap, trade, or explore. He came to show off. And he wanted a guide who knew the frontier better than any man alive. So who did he hire? Jim Bridger. Okay, so the expedition begins. He's traveling with a palace on the prairie. Now, this is could almost be a funny movie. So he didn't travel light. Sir Gore George, he traveled with his caravan of 40 servants, dozens of wagons, hundreds of rifles and pistols, 3 big wagons just for wine, his own chef, a luxurious tents with carpets and furniture, and a full hunting hound pack. Now, it's said that some of these wagons, there was one wagon that was just dedicated to rifles and pistols, a whole wagon full of guns. And there was other wagons, and he even brought, a small library with him. Everything from volumes of Shakespeare to, so he had plenty of reading material, and not just any tent. He wasn't a servant. They brought one of the biggest tents. So can you imagine? Oh, it's time to set up the tent. And you pull out this tent, and it's as big as one you'd see at a circus. I mean, and they would set it up, and they'd have all these servants running around and dogs for the hunt. And oh my gosh, it must have been a sight to see. To the mountain men watching this circus roll through camp, was like watching a king march into the wilderness, of course. But this was the kind of crazy that you just don't even understand. And so Gore came in there to hunt. And this was anything that moved, he was hunting. He was destroying everything that moved. And of course, over the course of his extravaganza, he reportedly killed 2,000 buffalo, 1,600 deer and elk, and 500 bears. Ooh. And yeah, and he didn't even use the meat. He just wanted trophies, horns, hides, and bragging rights. They said he would sit up there and just, shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot. And it just, him alone was pissing off the Indians. They even complained to the Indian agents, and I mean, it was really bad. One guy coming in there with this big menagerie and just killing everything in sight and just chopping off the best parts, the horns, and leaving it. So Bridger did his job, guiding him through the Yellowstone, Montana, Wyoming territories. It was hard for this guy to get going too. Apparently, being of noble blood, you don't get up before noon. So you didn't get an early start. You didn't move fast. And just talking. Yeah, this was crazy. I can't imagine being Jim Bridger, the guide, saying, "Okay, he's still sleeping? Yeah. Well, it's 11 o'clock. He's going to get up and his servants are going to give him a bath and dress him in the nicest clothes. And then he's going to want to go out and shoot a few buffalo this morning, and then maybe have some tea later. And then he'll continue on, and then we'll set up camp again about 6. I mean, I'd be like, oh, I want to, you're supposed to be on a wagon train moving. Let's go. But this is what he was getting paid for. But
and as you read that, I'm like, having been a carny and knowing what it's like to set them big tents up, you got to have especially if you've got a crew of 10 men, you could set those tents up in 30 minutes.
Well, he had 40 servants. I don't even know how many men were with it, but it was a lot of people. And well, you figure you had to have cooks, you had to have cleaners, you had to have people set up the tents, men to drive the wagons. You know what I mean? If you have wagons full of wine, to be served, and I mean, I just can't imagine how many people there actually was, because you don't think he was chopping off the horns and taking the trophies. He had probably a half a dozen guys just doing that.
Yep.
So the Indians were getting mad. They realized this wasn't survival. This wasn't frontier living. This was just a waste. And the native tribes were getting pissed. And even the Crow and the Blackfeet, especially them, they grew furious with Gore's senseless killing. Buffalo was survival to them, not sport. One Crow leader confronted Bridger and asked, why does the white chief kill for no reason? Why does he leave the meat to rot? And Bridger tried to keep the peace, but the damage was done. And tensions grew so high that Gore's expedition nearly sparked a war with the tribes. I'm surprised they didn't. Bridger, well, anyway, Bridger respected the land, and he hated Gore's wasteful arrogance. But hey, the guy with the man with the most money can do whatever he wants. We already know that. Talk to Bill Gates and what's that other guy? Elon Musk. You want to go to the moon? Oh, no, I don't want to go to the moon. Let's go to Mars. Anyway, so one day after watching the nobleman order an entire herd slaughtered for nothing, Bridger reportedly muttered to another guide, if foolishness was fuel, this man's fired burned for 1,000 years. Eventually, Bridger had enough. And when the expedition reached Fort Laramie, Bridger quit the job and left Gore to his own chaos. And honestly, who can blame him? Actually, it was other than that, because apparently his young son in St. Louis died from dysentery. And if you don't know, that's from drinking bad water and stuff. So his young son died, and then when he got to Laramie, he said, I gotta go, and probably good reason. So not long after Bridger departed, Gore angered the Blackfeet so badly that they raided his camp and destroyed a chunk of his supplies. Servants ran, animals scattered, expensive equipment smashed. Gore survived, but the frontier made sure he didn't leave untouched. He returned east with fewer wagons, fewer men, and a reputation as the most wasteful hunter in the Rocky Mountain history. Meanwhile, Jim Bridger walked away with his name untarnished, still respected by tribes, trappers, and soldiers alike. So, what do you think about that one? Well, anyway, there's a code in the frontier. A quiet rule every mountain man understood, and you only take what you need. Not because somebody wrote it down, not because the land remembers. Hey, if they would have stuck by the code, there'd still be buffalo herds out there. And Jim Bridger, well, he lived by that code. The tribes lived by that code. If a man killed a buffalo, every part was used: meat, hide, bone, sinew. Nothing wasted. Everything respected. And people forgot that, especially when they went out there to do buffalo hides. They would kill the buffalo, take the hide, and leave the rest. And people like Sir St. George Gore, they turned hunting into slaughter. buffalo were left to rot. This was just the beginning. I think, I can imagine seeing the Indian and the thought of, oh my God, this is one guy killing all the buffalo. What if, there was 100 guys like that out here? We won't have anything left. Well, anyway, this is it was just wasteful and disrespectful, and it was dangerous. It damaged the land and starved the tribes and pushed the West towards war. If that didn't spark, the Indians' hatred of the white man, I don't think nothing would. So it's just like a lot of stuff like that. It just saddens me to know that this was all happening. There's other stories I could tell you about the bears and things like that, but I just thought that one was probably more important than any other story that I could probably bring up, because that was such a waste. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you have to? I'm sure you got a comment on that.
Yeah. So it was Jim that did all the shooting.
Huh?
No.
Yes.
Who was? Huh?
It was Saint George, George, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did the shooting. That was his thing. He was out there. He was going to shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot.
I wondered. He just wanted target practice.
Yeah. He wanted target practice, get trophies. He could walk out of there saying, I went out west and I shot a whole herd of buffalo. There was just so many, I shot a whole herd.
And many of them just stood there.
Yeah. And and then, oh, look, there's an elk. Boom. Because back in the day there wasn't as many Indians. There was Indians, but you're out there pretty much by yourself and your troop and your group, and I'm sure they use some of the meat to feed the tribe or themselves, but other than that, that's it. You're just killing for fun. A whole herd of buffalo. I can't even imagine how many that would have been. So anyway, yeah, just sad. It's just really sad. But hey, I want to show this off. This was a good one here. I wanted to show off this here bit. Maybe you got a comment on this. This is the Jim Bridger's original gun. Look how big that thing is. It's huge. A big a black powder gun, and you'd have your balls in the bag, and your gunpowder and your horn, and you're carrying around this huge gun. Oh my gosh. So I just thought they do have his original gun, and that's what it would look like. So, and those things aren't light. I have one, and they're pretty darn heavy. Yep. Oh yeah, Elderberry says maybe they should have made a deal with the tribes. Yes, that guy should have, but he probably thought, oh, I'll just shoot at the Indians next. He probably didn't think of any of that stuff. It's kind of sad. It really is. It really
is.
Yes.
There were many sad things, that happened on our way to opening up the West. And it's a shame there wasn't somebody that shot him. Somebody should have been there to rein him in,
Yeah.
To say, look, dude, if you shoot that gun one more time, I'm going to whoop your butt, Well,
I think that's what the Indians were saying. Hey, they're like,
yeah,
guys coming around, and they didn't really have the power. And then eventually he probably figured out and says, if nobody's going to do this, we're going to do this, because
right.
Here, and it's a good thing Jim Bridger walked away, because otherwise it would have been, like you said, he would have been there saying, well, you're the guy that's bringing him through. Why aren't you doing anything about it?
Yeah.
So anyway, so there you go. Well, anyway, we got a good story tonight. My bab, you don't want to hear more of my babble, but we are going to tell you about the nice shirts we have. The Milky Way Soul Tribe Native American Myths and Legends shirts. You got yours on? Oh
Yep.
yeah. All right, good job. And then we got these nice mugs. So you can go over to Streamlabs. The link is in the description below, and you can get these nice big mugs that say Robert and David, Hawkeye Two Feathers, greatest storyteller on YouTube. Support our show. Go over there, buy a shirt for Christmas. If you don't have anybody to buy it for, buy one for David. He likes to have them. I got mine, so too. It's all good. Help support Nina, and go over to Streamlabs. Link is in the description below. Makes great Christmas gift. She's got holiday shirts over there too. R. Wayne Steiger shirts, Anna Karana shirts, and Milky Way Soul Tribe shirts. So pick your pick. You got lots to choose from, and support our show, please. Thank you. We want to see you with your Milky Way shirt on, Native American tribe shirt on. Can't get better than that, right?
There you go.
All right. So anyway, we've got a new book tonight, new story. Oh boy.
We're starting on a new book after all these last few months of reading out of the same book. So
yep, absolutely. Can't wait to get started with this one. This one's kind of a short one, so we'll be on this one and then moving on to the next. 50 cal. Yeah, elderberry, you're right. They were shooting 50 cal. Brown the barrel to be more aesthetic. Yeah. I got one. I got to get the barrel re-blued or something. I didn't take care of it like I should, I guess. I guess you're supposed to just wash them with soap and water or something. But anyway, it's all right. But anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed the Jim Bridger story. I shortened it up. I could have went on and on. He did so many great things. Such a fascinating guy. Lots of adventures. So very well known by all the James Beckworth, Kit Carson, Jim Clayman, all of those. Everybody, he was the guy. Okay, well, it's all yours. If you're ready, you ready?
Yeah, let me put on my glasses.
All right.
All right. Yeah, this is hang on, there's more smudges on these glasses. Looks like I've been walking through a mud puddle with them. So, the name of the book that I'm reading from is called Fanciful Tales from Legends of the Adirondack Indians by Kate Brewer, 1905. So I think that other one was a lady who wrote that book as well, and Compton, I think. And so there were a lot of women reporters back in those days who were just fascinated with the Old West, and so they wrote down these stories, listening to the old men and to the and to the natives, because many of them were anthropologists in their thinking. They studied the ways of human beings. So, but anyway, so this is Fanciful Tales from Legends of the Adirondack Indians by Kate Brewer, 1905. This is the first story in the book, The Birth of the White Water Lily. All is excitement in the Indian village. The women have prepared a great feast, and the maidens are decked out in all their ornaments. Weatoa, the young chief, has returned from his victorious warpath, and the joyful welcome which belongs to the victor awaits him. The noonday sun shines down on the beautiful lake, so placid in the shimmering heat of the summer day. Weatoa is surrounded by his tribe, all looking in admiration at him, and he is good to look at, this young chief of scarce 25 summers, tall and straight as an arrow he is, with smooth brown limbs, which at every move show the strong, firm muscles. His plume of feathers waves back from his brow, from beneath which his eyes look black and piercing. Many there are in the group about him, hearing the story of his exploit, but his eyes rest not on any till, on the outskirts of the throng, and almost beyond reach of his voice, he reaches her he has sought, and holds her with his steady gaze. Not a pause in his story indicates to the listening tribe that his thoughts are wandering, but as the maiden meets his eye, a dusky red mounts to her cheek, and slowly and sadly she shakes her head. Then, brushing her hand hastily across her eyes, she turns toward the lake and is soon lost to sight among the trees. Concluding his tale somewhat hastily, Weatoa retires to his cabin and drops the deer skin before the entrance. Waiting a moment to be sure the tribe still remains before the hut, he carefully makes his way out of the rear, and by making a wide detour through the forest, reaches the lake without being seen. So much time had it taken that when he reached the edge of the lake where the canoes were pulled up, Osita's canoe was but a speck nearing the opposite shore. Dropping silently into his birch bark, he pushed out and pulled after the girl with long, swift strokes. Rapidly he gained on the figure ahead, but before he could reach her, or she had become aware of his presence, Osita had sprung from her skiff and was climbing the hill which rose steeply from the lake. Little heeding the wild creatures which froze into statues at her approach, she walked rapidly along till she reached an opening, knoll below which a huge rock rose a sheer 50 feet above the lake. Here she flung herself face down on the soft turf and lay motionless. Suddenly, she lifted her head and listened, then sprang to her feet, clasping her hands over her throbbing heart. It was but a second before the bushes parted and Weatoa stood before her. Only Osita has no word for Weatoa on his return from a victory over his enemies. Still, the quivering girl remained silent till, with one step, he reached her side and drew her to him. Then, with a quick movement, she tore herself from his embrace, and drawing herself to her full height, replied, "Very thankful is Osita that the chief returns to the tribe uninjured, and very thankful too must be the little bright-eyed Kiwa that her brave returns. When dost thou make thy wedding feast with her? Much time has gone now since she was promised to thee." The chief's brow darkened, and he made a motion to regain her side, but her eye forbade him. "Osita, Waiatoa loves not the little Kiwa, and will not take her to his cabin. Had his eyes but fallen on thee first, his promise would not have been given her. Come with me, and we will find another brave for the little Kiwa." Osita shook her head. "No, that would be wrong. And Waiatoa, the chief of his tribe, cannot do such a thing. Go to Kiwa and forget that thou hast loved Osita and that she has loved thee." At last her words, a fire leaped into the Indian's eyes, and disregarding her look, which forbade him, he clasped her in his arms and said, "Osita, since thou lovest me, thou shalt come with me. It's not Waiatoa who pleads with thee, but the chief who commands, and thou darest not disobey." Osita rested quietly in his strong young arms a moment, and then replied, "Waiatoa, because Osita loves thee and thy honor more than life, she cannot let thee do this thing. The Great Spirit will be angry with thee, and prosperity will leave the tribe. Farewell, Waiatoa. Osita goes, but leaves thee thy honor." With these words, the Indian girl broke from him, and with one leap plunged headlong from the steep rock into the lake, the water closing over her head. She never rose, and though the chief swam for hours, he failed to find a trace of her body. Returning to the village, he instituted a search which lasted till the moon had risen. No one found a trace or clue to aid in the recovering of the body of the favorite of the tribe. At last, in sorrow, the searchers returned to lament and mourn. The following day, some of the young men went to the spot to see if perchance the body had risen and returned with the astounding news that where the girl had gone down, there were beautiful white flowers growing on the surface of the water. Such a thing seemed too wonderful to be true, so the tribe, in a body, paddled to the place. And sure enough, the water was covered with beautiful flowers, with delicate white petals and rich golden centers. It is the beautiful white soul of Osita, with her heart of gold, come back to us in this form. And they sorrowed no more for the maiden whose purity and love remained always with them, in the form of the beautiful white lily, which spread and multiplied through all the waters fed by the lake of the Saranax. The end of the white water lily. A very interesting story. She wouldn't let him um, lose her honor or his. And she found that to be more important than their love because he had already been promised to Kiwa. And so it's like, no, you can't do that. No, 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 no. That's like committing adultery. No, no, no. So, but so, um, but that's an interesting moral of the story. Most of the time, somebody moves in, cuts their head off, and takes the wife. But this,
I know.
she's like, no, you can't do this. I'm going to leave you be, and so that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Well, exactly. It's sometimes a little hard when these people had loyalty back then compared to now. Nowadays, it's like, I just the heck with it, right? Oh, we got guesses for the cards already. Jaguar. There's no jaguar. There's a porcupine. There's a rabbit. There's a skunk, and there's a buffalo. No jaguar. It's got to be a lynx or a cougar.
mountain lion.
Or mountain lion. Mountain lion. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. F. Kitty says that's because it was loyalty or bad death. Yeah. I guess you don't want to be with somebody who you didn't want to be with. I guess that was the way to get out of it. Is jump headfirst off the cliff.
Well, but Osito is like, no, you've been promised, to Kiwa, and he's like, I'm the chief here.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you to obey me, and we're going to do this thing. And before there was any talking, she jumped into the water and ended that conversation.
Yeah.
I just think that's with all the stories that we've had with giants and folks lopping their heads off and all that kind of stuff. It's just interesting, and to see a real life story with morals.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
you can't do this. That it would be wrong. So
Yeah. I think we this new society we live in, they've thrown those morals right out the door. I kind of miss that. Back in the day, I had this discussion with my buddy a while back, and the women were real loyal to their man, and but they, of course, without the man, they couldn't own property. Of course, women couldn't vote. They couldn't get a job. They weren't able to build a house or live in the frontier, protect themselves. So you needed a man to do all those things for you. Hence, that's why man was always the protector. Your husband couldn't shoot the deer and bring in the buffalo meat. You guys are going to starve to death. So he had to be a provider, a protector, and he had to be a carpenter and a farmer, and it was about providing for the family and taking care of the woman, and because the woman couldn't shoot that big giant gun, weighs 20 pounds, and how's she going to fight off a tribe of Indians coming to attack? She's not. So Yeah, F Kitty says something here. This is good. A bit like public toy. Okay, let's read this. This is that is romancing history. People are as they were. They were just more public punishment. Instead of the divorce, those divorces would be punishment in the square instead. Yeah, I kind of agree. Or just yeah, you would get punished. Maybe not whipped, but it depends on if you were cheating. You know, you wouldn't get cheated on, kind of. You wouldn't like that. Man would get rid of the woman. There just wasn't done. I don't think like today. Man, these women that you watch a little bit of YouTube or some of these shows, it's like they don't care. These mattress actresses that just think, well, I can be on some kind of thing and earn thousands and thousands of dollars by just putting myself on OF. And they do, and then the other women get all jealous over it because they're making so much money.
Yeah.
But then when the man goes to treat a woman like she's supposed to be, she belittles him and expects, oh, you need to pay my time for coming on the date, you need to take care of my children. Well, if you're going on a date, the guy shouldn't have to pay to take you on a date now. That's what it's coming down to. I seen that the other day. The lady was talking about it. She says, if a guy invites you for coffee, that's a cheap date. You should send him a bill for $500 because that's what your time is worth. I thought, what the fudge? You invite him?
I listened to something earlier today, and it's something about horror, something anyway. And the first part of the word is horror, hoe.
Oh,
and that just 50 years ago, even back in the 50s and 60s, my parents, they they got married for life.
Yeah.
They spent 40, 50 years, and so that the value of the woman as a mate was greater than what it is now. So if you wanted a wife, quote, to perform like a wife back, 60, 70 years ago, you'd have to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
You couldn't just marry a woman and together grow your life together like what happened back in the day. Even my parents, lived in a small apartment when Pops was in the Navy in San Francisco. And they talked about how, it was a small apartment, but it overlooked the bay and the San Francisco Bridge. And that was one of the best times in their life. Of course, it was before any of us were born. But to the point, though, they started out small and saved their money, and they bought a house eventually, and and had a pretty decent life together. So, but nowadays the woman expects so much from the man, but she doesn't want to participate because she doesn't feel like she needs to. Well, you should do it. And so it's like, don't know where these chicks are getting their stuff from, but I'll tell you what, no wonder why men are single, and don't want to go through it. It's horrendous, and women think, oh, you're just a dumb man, you don't know. No. I understand this. I've been married 4 times, damn it. I'm still here on the same place. You know what I mean? Yeah. And if one of them women would have stuck with me, she'd have 18 acres and a house that's paid for and wouldn't have to worry about it. We could work on fixing it up and that kind of thing, but and dressing it up. But how, oh, woe is me, and you don't make enough money for me, and okay, bite me.
Hmm. Oh
So
yeah.
anyway,
No, you're right. You're right. That's kind of how it goes because it's like even when you do, it's like you can just see, at least from my being single, uh, you can just see by the way they talk and act that they're looking for, they're not looking for love and loyalty and trust. They're looking for something else, and it's kind of sucky. It's like, you know, I didn't show up to this coffee date to become, the money giver or the provider or whatever, and I barely know you, kind of thing. Uh,
yeah,
uh,
because in my humble opinion, and I tried it. I'm like, I want to marry you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to grow old and sit on the porch and you know smoke one and maybe drink a beer and hold hands and kissy kiss and be romantic and
mhm.
maybe go catfishing or go go do something, go for a walk, whatever. But oh well, but that's for some reason. Oh well, I want a man like that. No, you don't.
Nope.
No, no, you don't. You say
No,
you
no.
do, but then they say, well, how much money do you have in your savings account? Well, what does that matter? I'm on Social Security. I get a check every month. Yeah, well, but you don't get a $3,000 a month check. No, but I do. Okay. No, well, and you don't have any money in your savings account? No, I don't have a savings account. Oh well, then never mind. Goodbye. That's that. And it's like, shame on you. What I have to offer is my love for the future. And I want to, bind myself with a woman and that we can share and be romantic together and hold hands and but you don't want to be that woman. They always say, "Oh, I want a man who'll go on long walks with me," and that's bullshit.
No, they want a guy with a big credit card, and, you know, and they want a guy who, goes to work and makes more money, and they want a guy who will pay for the dinner and, do all that other stuff too, and then so they don't have to work. At least that's the vibes I get nowadays. It's like, what the heck?
Yeah,
Uh,
and the thing is that I have been shamed by women because I'm too poor. And
yep.
I'm like, I worked hard all my life, damn it. And Uncle Sam took out his share of money. I've been, beat up, tore up, in accidents and had my body rearranged and but I'm still here. Um, but circumstances made my financial situation, you know. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I made a little over minimum wage, and I made more money than the other guys on my crew. I was the foreman. I made it to the head of my class, but I didn't make enough money for you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah, and that's something.
So it's a shame that it has to be about money. Um, you know, the security for me is like, well, I got a house, it's paid for. I got land, it's paid for.
Hmm.
My vehicles are paid for. Everything I got is paid for. So I know people that my age who still have a 30-year mortgage.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? They're going to have to pay, $1,000 a month until they die. Not me. Okay, children's.
Okay, we ready?
Yeah, boy, what a somebody else drew these cards. I swear to goodness, Lord have mercy, what a mess. Okay, here we go. There's a bunch of them. The first one out is Spider, upside down. And spiders about the web, and the web was looking like letters. The next one, spiders upside down. The next one is crow, right side up. And crow is the keeper of magic. The next one up is down, is skunk, upside down. And we haven't had skunk in a while.
No.
And skunk is about reputation and respect. The next card up is deer, right side up.
Ooh, deer.
And we know that deer is, clears the way to Sacred Mountain for all of us.
Yep.
And the next one is weasel.
Oh, we haven't had that one.
No, we haven't. And it's upside down. And I can't remember weasel at the moment. So the next three cards, last three cards, are upside down. And I couldn't believe it, but the next card is dolphin, upside down. And I think that's manna from heaven, or manna. Then the next one upside down is whale, and that's the Akashic record and the library. And then the last one upside down is porcupine, which
somebody has porcupine. I know somebody picked that.
Is my family crest, the Null family crest. So interesting. What a mess.
Yeah.
What a mess.
We had porcupine last week, I think.
No.
I'm pretty sure we had weasel. Accountability is weasel. Epic cards. So let's see what everybody got. Lucky's got snake, dog, raven, butterfly, and turkey. Let's see who else is there. I know everybody had guesses here. That was a while back.
Yeah, whale is the record keeper, and dolphin is manna.
Elderberry's got jaguar, porcupine, rabbit, skunk, and buffalo. He's got two right. Porcupine and skunk. There you go. Yeah.
All right. Spider is about weaving. And so it was that Spider wove the first primordial alphabet, as she had woven the dream of the world that had become manifest. Spider's dream of the physical world had come to fruition millions of years before. So upside down, the contrary aspect of Spider is akin to the negative side of a woman. Ooh. Spider will eat her mate if she gets too caught up in herself to see the validity of honoring male energy. And we was just talking about that, you know. The warrior at her side is a strong balancing force. If you are not presently in a relationship, you may have chosen a member of your family or a workmate to harass. That's interesting. This type of negative criticism only breaks down relations and is a reflection of um, of something you hate about yourself. So if you're trying to, like the black widow spider, eat your mate or your friend or an acquaintance, this type of negative criticism only breaks down relations. And it's probably a reflection of something that you hate about yourself. If this does not apply to your situation, take a look at another message that contrary spider medicine brings: lack of creativity. Ooh. So, lack of creativity can change into destructiveness. If you are feeling stagnant and unable to move in a positive direction, you may come to resent others who are doing well. This resentment will become a black widow spider and eat you up. And the only one to mourn your demise will be you. The next card up is Crow. So, we're starting out with Spider upside down. And so, if you're harassing somebody or if you're, not being creative, um, non-creativity can bring destructiveness. So we got to make sure that, idle hands are, the devil's workshop. Crow is law. There is a medicine story that tells of Crow's fascination with her own shadow. She kept looking at it, scratching at it, pecking at it, until her shadow woke up and became alive. And then Crow's shadow ate her. Crow is dead Crow now. Dead Crow is a left-handed guardian. If you look deeply into Crow's eye, you will have found the gateway to the supernatural. Crow knows the unknowable mysteries of creation and is the keeper of all sacred life. Is keeper of all sacred law. And since Crow is the keeper of sacred law, Crow can bend the laws of the physical universe and shapeshift. All sacred texts are under the protection of Crow. Creator's Book of Laws or Book of Seals is bound in crow feathers. Crow feathers tell of spirit made flesh. Crow is also the protector of the Ogala, or the ancient records. So if crow medicine appears in your spread, you must pause and reflect on how you see the laws of the Great Spirit and how those are in relationship to the laws of humanity. Crow medicine signifies a first-hand knowledge of a higher order of right and wrong than that indicated by the laws created in a human culture. With crow medicine, you speak in a powerful voice when addressing issues that for you seem out of harmony, out of balance, out of whack, or simply unjust. So, in this, be willing to walk your talk and speak your truth. So, there's Crow. It's a good message, you know. Spider upside down, you haven't been creative. And so, Crow is, to me, is, you know, showing that, you can be strong in what you're doing, and and you know follow what the Great Spirit has. Now the next one up is skunk upside down. Yep, I was right. Skunk is reputation. Skunk is teaching you that by walking your talk and by respecting yourself, you will create a position of strength and honored reputation. Now that's when it's right side up. So if it's upside down, it indicates that your self-esteem may seem to others as if you're putting on airs. In other words, you're faking it. Observe whether or not you are repelling others because of envy, jealousy, or projection of their low self esteem. Examine your feelings and be truthful with yourself. So, Crow's saying, hey, keep an eye on this. And, you look first with one eye and then the other to find the truth. So here's Skunk upside down saying, in assuming nonchalance, you are neutralizing the effect of leaking energy. So Skunk says if your ego is not your amigo, then you know it stinks. To balance the causes and effects of your actions and energy flows, you must decide whether or not you need to spray in the direction of others. Ooh. In other words, to repel them or to attract them. So Skunk's saying you got to make up your mind in that respect, but it is about um, reputation. So Deer is the next card up, and Deer is about gentleness. And so, Fawn was trying to get up Sacred Mountain, and the demon was trying to keep her out. And Fawn just said to gently to the demon, hey, I want to go up the Sacred Mountain and chat with the Great Spirit. And the demon just screaming and hollering and making faces. And finally, Fawn just is patient and smiles at the demon and keeps asking kindly. And finally, the demon's heart shrank to the size of a walnut, and Deer was allowed to go up Sacred Mountain. And so the gentleness of Deer has the road to Sacred Mountain is open. So with her gentleness. So, Skunk is like your reputation. Get yourself straightened out, and Deer comes jumping in here and says, do it with kindness, do it with gentleness. Weasel comes in, number 33, upside down. Um, there's a bunch of, there's a bunch of this is about energies. So Weasel is about stealth. So Weasel went to the enemy camps to smoke them for their power. And Weasel never failed to give an accurate account of the enemy's numbers and strengths. So it's about stealth. But upside down, look out for some intrigue. Someone may be using covert tactics to weasel into the henhouse. So Deer is saying, the road's open with the gentleness we got. But another message of a reverse weasel is you need to acknowledge why you have been doubting your feelings. So that's what seems to be going on here. That, skunk is about reputation, but it's upside down, you know, and crow is about, you gotta keep the the medicine right. Weasel's upside down, and you know, um, you got to shake the dullness out of your head. Spider was saying, "Hey, you might not be being creative enough." So the next card up is number 40. It's Dolphin, and Dolphin is about mana, and mana is the breath of life. Then it's the only thing that humans cannot live without is air, breath. Dolphin is the keeper of the sacred breath of all life and teaches us how to release emotions through dolphin breath. So Spiders was saying maybe you ain't being creative enough, and maybe your self-esteem is, being um, um, under fire. So if dolphin appears reversed, know that you are forgetting to breathe. So that's interesting. Another message of contrary dolphin is that many signals are carried through the universal tides or waves, and you may be failing to use your own sonar to stay out of trouble. So now the next card down is Whale, number 41, and Whale is the record keeper. So Whale saw the events that led to the settling of Turtle Island and has kept the records and knowledge of the motherland alive. So whale medicine people are coded in their DNA to understand that sound frequencies can bring up the records in our memories of the ancient knowledge. But being upside down, um, on some level, you have forgotten that you hold all the answers you need to survive. So all these cards are telling me tonight is that for any of us out there who haven't been creative enough, or we haven't had enough um, um, belief in ourselves or whatever, that it's time to do so. Contrary Whale is saying that you must desire to know. You must seek the whale song within you. And hearing the whale's call, you will connect to the ancients on a cellular level. So, Crow, the ancient um, medicine, porcupine is number 12. And porcupine is innocence. So, if you were to observe porcupine, you would immediately notice its quills. These quills are only used when trust has been broken between porcupine and another creature. So, porcupine is a playful critter until you try to pick on it. In pulling the porcupine card reversed, you are giving yourself a timely warning that you cannot win the game of life if you are too serious. So that's interesting. So, in some area of your life, you may be feeling hurt or afraid of trusting again? It is possible that life has recently dealt you a hard blow. Um, if a porcupine is belly up with its quills stuck in the ground, it's a rather defenseless position. You may be forcing yourself to be vulnerable so that you can regain your own hope. Perhaps you need to roll over to get your tummy patted. Well, pat my belly. I'm 199.6 pounds. It looks like I ate a basketball. So, the cards. It seems that the cards are saying, hey, we need to have faith in ourselves. Um, we're not creative enough, or we've been sitting still. Deer's got the innocent card going, so we need to get on up to Spirit Mountain and have a chat with the Creator. But we need to learn how to breathe, and we need to sing our whale song so that we can hear the ancients speaking to us. And Porcupine saying we need our belly rubbed. Interesting cards. They're not bad, not by a long shot. If anything, it's like, come on, get it together.
There we go. Great cards.
Yeah, I mean they're weird, but they're all good cards. I mean, as far as trying to build up, don't know what's going on, buddy, but straighten it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of the way it goes. I like it. It was good cards tonight. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. We haven't had whale in a while, and dolphin are together, which is kind of
back to back. I mean, literally, and both of them upside down. Yeah, it was really weird. Yep. And I shuffled the cards too, Not that it matters, because it's been a week since I picked up the cards. And so I don't know what these cards are. I'm going to pick them up and sort through them anyway, So shuffling for me is for my own benefit. I want to shuffle the card just because. But does it really matter? No.
I've seen a weasel a few times. Elderberry saying, always watching for a weasel. Yeah, it's hard to see a weasel. I've seen a weasel a couple of times out in the wild, but they're far and few between. Far and few between.
Yeah, and I used to have a weasel, sort of. It was a ferret.
Yeah.
And Rocky was a trip, buddy. I'll tell you what. Crawling all over the house and up the stairs and all around. There's all kinds of places for a critter like that to hide here in my house. And he just went crazy, so.
Do they eat mice or something too, or like a cat would, or what?
Yeah, in fact, during the war and everything, one of the reasons they kept weasels on ships was because that they could chase the rats down into the little cubby holes and get them. So all the little tubes and places, and can't get the rats, and send off that ferret, that weasel, and he'll get him. And so the answer is, yeah, he would. They would catch the rats and mice, and they'd eat them too. So it wasn't like, but it was fun in the hunt.
Yeah.
Crow
says Do you have any videos or pictures of it?
Of what?
Of your weasel or your ferret?
Oh, no.
No.
Unfortunately, no. That
Yeah.
was years ago, and I have lost pictures on hard drives twice since then. So, no.
Always worry about that. Putting all these pictures on these computer things. One day they just go, then I got one of these days I got to print off some pictures and put some pictures in the photo albums because I got lots of photo albums from back in the day, and then everything went digital and I kind of quit. You know. See,
Well, I know the answer to the picture thing.
Yeah.
And that is to get a removable hard drive, a standalone hard drive to keep your pictures in. Because then when your computer freaks out and dies, I've got a half a terabyte Seagate drive that I've had for over 10 years, and there's no way it's full. But when I want to download pictures, I plug it into the computer and I download them, and then I unplug it. So there's no way that anything can get to it. Thunderstorm, it's sitting in a drawer, you know. It's not hooked up. I've lost too many documents and things from lightning storms and weird stuff. And so I'm here to tell you, a separate drive. That's the answer.
Yeah, that's what I got on my computer. I got, all these extra hard drives, and I got doubles, and usually doubles of everything. But, if something happens, I got, how many of them I got here? I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 5 extra hard drives hooked up to this computer, separate ones, and besides the computer itself. So I don't have to worry. Everything's backed up, and its backups has backups.
Are you talking about the little sticks?
No, I'm talking about a big box.
Oh, so you're talking about a hard drive. Oh, good for you.
Yes. I got sticks here too, but sometimes if you leave them too long, they just go bad.
Really?
Yeah. Had that happen before. I went there to look at them, and it's like, oh, there's nothing on there. How about that? Yeah, well. Yeah. So anyway, you got a show tonight.
No, I'm tired. I got to lay down.
All right. Okay.
After almost breaking my leg, I have got to put my leg down.
Just send the Hawkeye some good healing vibes, everybody, and get his leg healed back up.
Yeah, I did. I will admit to just having the spirits help me do something stupid yesterday, and I was riding on my little cart and got my leg caught between the cart and my boat trolling motor, and it liked to tore my leg off. So I have a big boo-boo on my right leg. I still don't know how it happened, but it did, and it hurts. Big time. It's an owie. I told the nurse today, well, I had a doctor's appointment, and I'm doing pretty good, the doc says, but I'm limping through the halls to go get weighed, and she's like, Mr. Null, how you doing today? And I'm like, well, I got this pain thing going on, and she's like, yeah, well, how's your back doing? And I said, I don't know. My leg hurts so bad I can't tell. She busted out laughing. But it's the truth. My leg hurts so bad today. I was like, I don't know about my back. My leg hurts too bad. So, but anyway, thank you, Robert, and thank you all for coming tonight as always. And and know that I'm always praying, and I always hope that you will, continue to learn how to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings from the universe. And y'all keep it together until we see you next time.
Well, thank you. That sounds so good. Remember, everybody, go out and do something nice. Remember to get one of these shirts, limited time only, and get one for Christmas and support our show. And remember, everybody, the season for giving and receiving is coming up. And that's Thanksgiving. Provide somebody with a meal. If you got a big turkey, share a little bit of it. Be thankful for what you got and give back to others. And that's the only way we're all going to get through this. And we all end up the same place. So nobody's above and nobody's below. We're all here in the boat. And with that, everybody, remember to go out, be the frequency you want to receive. Love you all. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.